right, Tiffany, you can take the lead today.
All right. Well, sure. Well, thank you for the three of you who have joined us. Welcome to this version of Glad That You Asked. And so we have a few topics that we're going to start out with, and we're going to do the usual where we open it up for questions from you all once we address the first three topics. And so to get started, the first one is actually just a reminder. You all should get a daily digest from your email address from the Burlington office every day. And that daily digest, it has available training resources that you have access to. KWRI has something called KW Connect. And there are live training classes every single day, sometimes multiple training classes in a day. And so just a reminder that these are resources and training that's available at any time for you to plug into and get some training. So if you go into your daily digest, the link for those live training sessions every week is in the Monday link. And so they have different classes that they offer every day throughout the week. So just wanted to remind you all that that's an amazing tool and some wonderful training that's always available as you want to learn more about command or some other KW policies, or also, they have trainings on suggestions for how to excel in this market. So lots of great training options for you all. All right, so the first question that we're going to bring up today here is something that is in the newest version of our offer to purchase and contract. The wording changed to allow a better understanding. So the question is, did you know that the buyer's right to terminate during the due diligence period is only available if they have actually paid a due diligence fee? And if they have not paid the due diligence fee, if it's still outstanding, they don't have that right to terminate according to that section. And if they do terminate, then they are actually in breach, and the seller has the right to pursue both the due diligence and the earnest money. That's one of those did you know? And so one of the changes in this latest version of the offer to purchase is to clarify that a bit and help buyers and sellers understand that that right to terminate during the due diligence period only applies for buyers who have paid a due diligence fee. So we want to make sure that you all are aware, that you're clear, and that you can clearly educate your clients when it comes to that fact. Any questions about that? Sarah?
So does it mean that the due diligence money was not equal to zero, or are you referring to like they didn't actually hand the check over as far as paid?
They did not hand the check over. Right. So if there's a due diligence fee that was agreed to per contract and they did not pay it, they don't have that right to terminate during the due diligence period according to the terms of the contract. Any other questions? All right, so just wanted to make sure that that was very clear. That's one of the many new changes in our standard offer to purchase, and there's a lot of other changes. If you haven't been through all your documentation yet, we certainly recommend that you go through. There are some big changes that are in the listing agreement that you should be aware of as you go through that. And there are several changes in some of the addendum as well. So we want to encourage all those changes. And then we're going to, of course, have a training that we're creating for you all shortly to just go over those in more detail.
And thank you, Tiffany. I just wanted to bring up one thing about that due diligence situation, and this actually happened. Just this week, there's an agent who has a buyer. They went under contract on Friday, this past Friday, at one price. went out of town. Due diligence was due. It was due the effective date of the contract Friday. Went out of town and said, oh, we'll pay the due diligence when we get back. Well, lo and behold, they come back Monday, and the buyer's agent, who's our agent, is requesting the due diligence from the buyer. Buyer decided over the weekend that they didn't want to pay the price that was in the contract. They wanted to pay another price. They wanted to reduce the price, the contract price. They wanted to reduce it. So they wanted to begin negotiations with the seller again. Never paid the due diligence fee. Okay. So here we are Tuesday, and this is Tuesday of this week. We get a call from the agent. Well, I take that back. I get an email from the listing agent saying, I need some help here. Can you help the agent get the due diligence fee from the buyer? And she commences to explain what is going on. And so one of my questions was initially, is why did you even entertain the negotiation of the price if there's already a contract? Because her seller actually entertained the negotiations, but there's a contract on the table. Okay, so here's the other thing. At that point, can we as a firm force the buyer to pay the due diligence fee?
Of course not.
You can't force them. So what do we do in that situation? If that happens, what do we do? So we let the buyer know, based on this contract that you are legally bound to, these are your obligations. I also asked the listing agent this: did your seller make a written demand for the due diligence fee and allow the buyer a banking day to get it in? And they had not done that. So I said, okay, well, let's go there. You do that. In the meantime, before we receive it, we'll go back to the buyer and make sure they understand the consequences of them not turning over that due diligence fee. So I know that's a long story to finally get to. The seller and listing agent had to just, okay, chalk it up to, I don't think we're going to get it, because the buyer stopped communicating with us. We made the demand, buyer stopped communicating with us. And so at that point, what do you really do? We can't make the buyer pay it and turn over the due diligence fee. So our obligation is to let them know what they've signed and the consequences of it, and to let them know that the seller has remedy because you're in breach. So if you don't pay the due diligence fee, you're in breach. That buyer's in breach already. So like Tiffany was saying, you don't have the right to terminate, you're in breach. So that was a very interesting situation, because exactly that did just happen this week. So at this point, the seller said, okay, we're done. Yeah, terminated. Yeah.
All right. And so just a refresher, a reminder for you all again, I don't know where buyers got the idea that the due diligence was optional, but it's not at all. It's actually a part of the contract that they agreed to and that they agreed to pay. And it's important for them to understand that if they fail to pay it, that they are the ones in breach, and that the seller does have the remedy not only to pursue the due diligence, but also the earnest money, if there's any in the transaction as well. So we have to do a better job of educating our buyers and making sure that they understand what they owe. Yeah, either the seller can pursue in court, small claims court, they can pursue it, hire an attorney and go for the whole deal. But per the contract, they have the right to do so, that they are entitled to that when that buyer agrees and signs that contract. So it's important for buyers to know that they are in breach. And when they're in breach, it's not just the due diligence money that is up for grabs in the contract. All right. So making sure that buyers understand the importance of what they are agreeing to and when they need to get it paid, which is immediately upon the effective date of the contract. All right. All right. Well, thank you, Teresa, for sharing that scenario, real life. And I'm sure that you probably have all heard of buyers not paying the due diligence or dragging their feet with paying it. And so another one of the changes was to allow for electronic funds transfer for that due diligence as well. And so that should help expedite those payments being able to be made quickly to the seller. And so the seller has some responsibility in making sure that they can receive those funds electronically if they agree to it. But it is the buyer's responsibility to pay any fees associated with those transfers. All right. All right. Next scenario that we have.
Melissa's hand is raised.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So is there, so I've heard of people using Venmo, but I mean, are there any other electronic means like a credit card that we could be securing these due diligence fees with, especially if we're talking about somebody that's out of town? What is y'all's recommendations? Because of, I mean, when both parties, we're at contract as soon as both parties have agreed, right, and signed.
Mhm.
Is that
And
correct?
communicate it.
Yeah.
Right.
So if it's almost like we shouldn't be at contract if we don't have the due diligence money, if, it could create in the past, I've always gotten just like a copy of the check, right? So I've got at least a copy of the check and then make arrangements to pick the check up, the check's mailed, whatever. But they could stop payment on it, but anybody could stop payment, right? I mean, what are y'all thinking? I mean,
Okay. So I didn't catch that last part of your statement, Melissa, but I think I get the gist of your question here. It sounds like you asked two. The first one is, what are the means when it comes to electronic? And so in addition to Venmo, there's a ton of apps that are like cash transfer apps that are out there now. There's PayPal, there is Cash App, there is Zelle. And, that's just a handful, but whatever the electronic transfer means that the buyer is proposing, the seller would have to agree to and either establish that type of an account so that they could receive those funds, or share the type of money transfer account that they have to see if the buyer would be able to transfer by those means. But they have to come to an agreement at the time of contract on which one of those methods they're going to use for that transfer. I have not heard of anyone using a credit card yet, but let me tell you, stranger things have happened. And so, if the buyers have if the sellers have the ability to receive credit card compensation or payment, if they can make those arrangements between seller and buyer, that's another potential means for, but I don't know that I would recommend that if there's any lending involved, because now you're going to have a hit on the credit and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know that that's necessarily the right or a recommended way, but again, whatever buyer and seller agree to for the electronic transfer, they should agree to that as a part of the contract. And again, it's our duty as agents to explain when it's actually due and the rights of both parties, the buyer and the seller. So again, the buyer's in breach if they don't provide it right away, but the seller can't terminate until they give a written notice and a banking day for the buyer to provide those funds. And so just educating both sides, both parties on their duties when it comes to this contract and what they're agreeing on.
what we run into a lot, especially like with Durham agents, is they will not allow their seller to sign the contract, the agreed upon contract, until they have their due diligence money in hand.
Mm-hmm.
So we're like driving 2 counties to try to get it, to that listing agent.
Yeah, I've heard of that. I've heard of agents recommending to their clients that they don't sign, that they can come to a verbal agreement, but that they don't actually execute until it's in hand. Because technically, per the contract, it is due at the time of execution, at the time that it's a legally binding contract. So there's no rules, there's nothing in place saying that they can't do that. Any other questions? All right. So the next topic that we have for you, there have been quite a few scenarios where there are people that are representing one side in the transaction and the other side is remaining unrepresented. This has come up quite a bit here lately. And so I was contacted recently with a question from an agent who, when she contacted me, she incorrectly called herself a dual agent. So I was trying to understand what was happening in the scenario, because she said, I'm in dual agency, when in fact, what she was a listing agent who had a buyer interested in making an offer that wanted to be unrepresented because the buyer has done real estate. They didn't feel like they needed an agent, etc. So just wanting to make sure that we clarify, what these terms mean, make sure that when you are in fact operating in dual agency or even designated agency, if you are in a transaction with an agent from our firm, but also when or what you can do and what do you owe to this unrepresented party. Okay, so I wanted to just talk through that scenario, because she was, bless her heart, she was as sweet as she could be, but she was very confused about, am I in dual agency? What do I do? What don't I do? And so I'm glad that we had a chance to have that conversation so that she understood that she could provide the documentation. She can write the terms of the offer from the direction of that buyer, and she's not representing the buyer. She's just receiving the information to fill in the blanks. You are permitted to do that. You can provide the documentation and fill it in for an unrepresented party in the transaction, because that is a part of getting the job done for your client. Okay, so it's important to understand that you are permitted to do that. You just have to be very careful not to give any advice or suggestions. Okay, so when you go into advising or suggesting anything, that is when you're crossing that line into an undisclosed dual agency scenario. So you can receive information, you can fill in the blanks, you can present it to your client, you can do all those things with an unrepresented person, but do not give any advice. If they ask questions, you need to refer them to an attorney, recommend that they get an agent, but explain that you don't represent them and you cannot advise them. Okay, you can answer point blank. You remember, you owe honesty, fairness, and disclosure of material facts. So you can answer those kinds of questions, but you cannot give advice. All right. And so that works for either side. If you're the agent on the seller side and you have an unrepresented buyer that comes and wants to place an offer, you can assist with that documentation and they can still be an unrepresented buyer. But what happens if you're the buyer's agent and your buyer wants to buy a house that is not listed with an unrepresented seller? You can still do the same things. You can still provide the documentation. I see a question here. The WWREA would be required from any unrepresented. That's correct. And you would do that one with the check mark on the unrepresented party on that part of the form, the disclosure form. All right. But yes, so even if you're the buyer's agent, you can provide the offer, you can get the terms of it, you can present it to the seller. Again, make sure you do your disclosure so the seller understands that you don't work for them. You can provide that seller the forms that they have to sign, like the RPODs and the oil, mineral, and gas. You provide that to them and explain that they are required to fill it out for the transaction. So you can provide the forms. These are things that you can do, and it's not considered to be dual agency. So you can do factual tasks, and you can schedule with the attorney, things like that. without it being a dual agency situation. Any questions about that?
I have a quick question that's not about that.
Okay, what do you got, Sarah?
When you have a married couple and only one, like let's say the wife is the one that is listed as the property owner only, does it matter which person is seller one?
Ah, good question. Just on the documentation. Teresa, I'm going to say no to that. Do you know anything other than me? Okay.
Doesn't matter.
So, and if I'm doing like, for example, doing the RPODs through DocuSign, would I have to have the property owner as the one that has filled in the bubbles, or does it matter?
Explain that again, Sarah.
When you do the RPODs through DocuSign with more than one party, it assigns it automatically to be filled out by seller one. So I was just kind of making sure that I don't need the property owner to be the one that has filled out that document, or if it can be either, since they're both signing it.
I gotcha. Well, in that case, I don't know that it really, I don't know that matters. I would, in that particular situation, just thinking it through, I would rather have the person whose name is on the deed, although they're married, and it's going to require both of them in order to convey it. I would probably say that first person for that would really be the one. Just in that scenario, just in how you explained it.
There's not like a rule or
Right.
a law stating that it has to be. So just what makes logical sense, you know, and sometimes, you know, it might be that the owner of record may not be the one that's the most knowledgeable. Maybe the spouse is more knowledgeable and should fill the form. So kind of what makes sense in your transaction. I would recommend, you know, for that.
I have a question regarding agency agreements.
Ah, hey, Mike.
So I had someone ask me the question, if you have an investor that you've signed in January of this year through the end of the year, do they need to sign the new buyer agency, or can they just wait until that one expires to sign the new? Or WWRA for that matter.
Good question. That's a very good question. Very good question. I would say it grandfathered in, since they started with that and it's valid, then it's going to be valid until it expires or terminates. So yeah.
And the reason they ask is because they are now getting ready to do another offer for this investor after July 1. And so the question came up, you know, whether, and I told them that I didn't think that they needed to. So, but they did anyway. They had already done it. So it didn't really matter.
But I think you told them the right thing, Mike. So they have an existing agency agreement that lasts through the end of the year. It's perfectly valid, even though forms have changed. And so they didn't have to do that. But if they've done it, then they've just dotted all their I's and crossed their T's, you know.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Good question.
Yeah, that was really good. And so those were the scenarios that and the information that we wanted to share with you all for the first portion of Glad You Asked. And now we are at the point where we open it up to any and all of your questions. And so if you have a scenario, okay, Sarah, I see your hand. Let's get started, Sarah.
Okay, so I'm under contract with one of my buyers on a home. They're a VA. And we, after going through the inspection, have realized there are some significant structural issues that we believe that they were aware of beforehand, although they did mark everything no representation.
Okay.
So they don't seem to be willing to work with us even though they agreed to the VA on the front end. And so my buyers are wondering if there's anything I can do to make sure they have to disclose it for people going forward. And I already talked to the listing agents on the phone, but he denied me from sending the inspection report. So I wasn't sure, can I send it anyway? And does that count as them being aware of it? Or like, what can I do, if anything, without being like illegal, but also like not letting them take advantage of more people?
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you, Sarah. Great question and great scenario. All right, Teresa, do you want to go first, or do you want me to take this one?
Doesn't matter. Tag team
Okay.
it.
All right.
So,
Well, so I'll jump in with my thoughts first, and then Teresa can add her icing to the cake, if you will. So Sarah, remember, as a real estate broker, we do have the duty to discover and disclose. And then once we know material facts, we do have that duty to share those material facts. And if your buyers have given you permission, and since they own that home inspection, you can still send the inspection to that agent. So that agent cannot claim that they don't know or negligent. They might be trying to intentionally not know, because once the agent knows, they have to disclose. And so it is your duty to disclose those material facts to all parties, including that agent. And so if you do send the home inspection, that takes away that agent's ability to continue to claim ignorance, which sounds like what they're trying to do by declining the home inspection. So you can certainly send it anyway, as long as you have your client's permission. Make sure you have it in writing, just to cover all your bases. And now, the seller doesn't have to disclose anything, but once agents are aware, they do. So that's pretty much what you could do to push the issue a bit for your buyers' concerns there.
Do I need to put a read receipt on that email, or is it considered he's got it once I've emailed it?
It wouldn't hurt to put one just to cover your bases. But generally, once it has gone into their server, it's considered to be delivered. But yeah, since it's a specific concern that the information is transmitted, it wouldn't hurt you to put that read receipt there. Yeah. Teresa, do you have anything to add to that, or are you in agreement?
yeah, in agreement. I would just, and the unfortunate thing is, in this industry, we can't ensure that they are going to tell the public or any other consumers. So it just goes back to making sure we've done our duty, as long as we perform our fiduciaries to our clients, and then what we owe customers or third parties. Just knowing that is enough, although we really can't ensure that they're going to tell the public.
Now, there have been buyers who decided that they were going to chase that thing until it ended. And so if your buyers are interested in pursuing that and following it, they certainly can. And they could, if they find that the listing goes back live and those disclosures are not included, they could file a complaint with the Real Estate Commission and have it looked into. So there are buyers who would choose to pursue that. But once you've done your duty of disclosing those facts, then you've satisfied your requirement.
So you're saying back away, Sarah.
Pass it on.
Yeah.
Home inspection on, and then let them chase it if they decide they want to.
Yeah. That way you're covered. You've done your part. Sure, absolutely.
So this was actually covered in a legal brief just a few weeks ago from the NC Realtors. And once you send it, the listing agent actually has the obligation to look at that report once they have it.
Right.
So, and it's like you said, if they don't, there's no way to really prove that they didn't, I guess, unless the buyer chases it. But I read those legal briefs every Monday. And there's another one that came up recently. If we're done on that topic, I'd like to ask a question, and Sarah knows what question I'm going to ask. It came out, I think, last Monday about the do not call list and agents calling for sub owners. And the specific question that came out of this was, is this legal brief specific to this situation? And did Teresa and Tiffany, did you ladies read that one? I'm sure you did.
I have looked up simply because, Mike, you're right. It has come up and someone came to me and brought it to my attention. So actually the other night, and I probably was half asleep doing it, I was looking at the do not call, the telephone, something can spam, all of that stuff. So I didn't see the article, but I am going to look at it right now. So keep asking your question, Mike.
Okay, so in that article, it states, so the article is written because a consumer wrote into the commission. And they summarized this by saying that their listing had expired, but they're getting 4 to 5 calls a day from agents wanting to list the house. And I took it that they were a for sale owner at some point, but they weren't currently a for sale owner. And they were threatening to hire an attorney to go after these agents that are calling, and was wondering if they could, they were asking the question of the commission if they would have the right to do that, which of course they do. But the first exception, it says that we can call for sub owners as long as we are calling them if we have a buyer.
Correct.
Not to go after the listing.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then they listed, I think, 4 other exceptions that kind of it was related.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know there's 2 or 3 people on this call that have questioned that because they call for sub owners and they are a little bit worried.
Mm-hmm.
So,
all right, it looks like Sarah has shared her screen. Thank you for that, Sarah. So this is the Q&A here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Their property's been off the market for a year, never sold, long expired. 5 calls a day asking to list their property. I am on that registry.
The funny thing is, I remember taking Bold when I first joined Keller Williams, and that was part of what Bold was doing, 100 calls a week, 100, and even right in the class with Bold is you have time to take out your phone and call people. And that was one of the complaints the agents were bringing back, is that, and part of the issue with sellers that they were calling, because we're all in the same area. So when we're calling expireds, so you got 10 different agents in a room calling the same potential seller or listing. So I can see where this becomes an issue, especially when that seller is on the do not call registry.
Mm-hmm.
So what was what was the question? Let me look here. Let me read this.
Well, so what Mike was saying there, or were you going to ask it again, Mike? Or
I mean, I was, but if you want to rephrase, that's okay.
I was going to say, yeah, what Mike was talking about is the scenarios where it would be okay to contact someone on the do not call registry. And it's mentioned here, if you notice in the answer, there's the numbered section there. These are the scenarios where it would be permissible and it would not violate the do not call registry. So it's right there. The first one, if you have a buyer and you're contacting a FSBO, then you would be able to call to make arrangements for your buyer client to potentially see the home and ask if they would compensate you for bringing a buyer. So you can do that legally, even if they're on the do not call registry. Notice the second one there is calls made to someone that the broker has a personal relationship with. Now you have to make sure that that person believes that you have a personal relationship, not just your end. But if you can prove that you have a personal relationship, maybe a friendship or regular communication outside of just that transmission. Number 3, you can call current clients, which that doesn't apply in this case. Number 4, calls to former clients for up to 18 months. And so again, if they were your client previously, for up to 18 months, they can call, but not just former clients of anyone. It has to be your company, your firm's former client. And that's where that whole expired scenario comes into play. Any agent does not have the right to call if it were previously listed, just the former client of that firm. Okay. And then number 5, calls to people who've given permission. So if they have gone to your website or entered their phone number, you can call those people for up to 3 months, if you have permission, if you've been invited to call, even if they're on the do not call registry. So those are the exceptions. Otherwise, there are some pretty stiff penalties, significant fines, $11,000, if I remember correctly, federally, and then $500 per call for state fines as well.
So Tiffany,
Yes,
on
sir.
number 4 says calls to former client of the firm for up to 18 months. So if it was my listing, even though the firm owns the listing, right? And Sarah called that person, is that okay?
Yes, former clients of the firm. And so remember, that client, we are all now sub-agents of that client. So as long as it's from the same firm, but she can't call someone from Coldwell Banker, you see, and say that you were formally listed. It has to be from that same firm.
What about them having posted it publicly? Because I had read that was why we could call them.
So again, you can call them if you have a buyer, but you can't call them to solicit listings. So, if they're going to sell their home, certainly they have to put a phone number to call if they're trying to sell it for sale by owner, but that's not considered an invitation for you to solicit the listing. It's an invitation to bring a buyer. So make sure you got that clear. Yeah. So that's a really great topic. Thanks, Mike, for bringing that one up.
Any others? No others, no other questions. If not, I'm telling you what's been happening lately is we must have been, cooking with grease, as the old people used to say, and moving right along in these meetings. I've been in several meetings where we've been able to give time back to people's day because we've done everything so expeditiously. So if Tiffany, you don't have any other topics, I'm going to save this one topic for the next Glad You Asked, because I want to get some more details on it, since I don't see the agent on here who brought it to me. So I'm going to save that one for next week. And if no one else has any other questions,
I will share one last thing, and maybe it'll jog a question. I have had some questions about how to work with agents or transactions in other states. And so I did want to bring up that, this came up recently. Remember that North Carolina is probably one of the strictest states when we're talking about agency and dual and designated and the things you can and can't do and disclosure requirements, all these types of things. The rules are very different in other states. And so making sure that you have a good understanding of how it works when it comes to the referral process and referring to agents in other states. And also, if agents from other states want to refer business to you, it's important to know, how those rules and why those rules are in place, because the laws are so different. Even just our border states, the laws are completely different: Tennessee, Virginia, South Carolina. So when you're dealing with agents from other states, it's best to try to make sure that you do referrals as much as possible and allow them to handle the business according to their state rules and laws, and not try to handle a transaction according to North Carolina laws when you're in another state. Okay, so it's important to understand how to operate when you're dealing with out-of-state people or transactions. Okay, so I recommend it'd be best to refer to a local agent and to make sure that when you receive referrals, they know that they can't come here. And if they come inside the state, then you can't pay them. So make sure that you explain how it works when they do try to come or refer people here. All right.
That was a good one, Tiffany. I had an agent call me probably a couple months ago. They were licensed in, I want to say, Oklahoma, maybe.
Okay.
And their son is moving to the area, and they were looking in different places, and they came across Burlington and said, okay, let me find a firm there to get an agent for my son. So who's an adult, son's an adult. It's not like he wasn't, he's 19, but he was really an adult. But mom just helping because she's a licensed broker in her state. So she called me because I'm the big, and asked, what can I do? I like to refer my son or get an agent for my son there and kind of help him out. And then she went on talking, and then she says, and, I would like to, as he's looking and we're finding properties, when you find something for him to view, I'm going to come with him. And soon as she said, I'm going to come with them, I had to stop her and ask, do you expect a referral fee? And she said, yes. And I said, the moment you come to North Carolina to assist your son, North Carolina rules and law says you forfeit your referral fee.
Mm-hmm.
And oh my God, oh really? I never knew. And so that goes back to what Tiffany is saying. The rules are different for different states. That was new to her. And had I not shared that with her, I'm pretty sure she would have came with her son, being that she's a broker and wants to help him in that capacity. She would have came to North Carolina. And at that point, she would have been heartbroken because she would have forfeited her referral fee. So yeah, making sure we know the rules in different states, as well as them knowing the rules here.
And understanding that we don't know and won't and can't know all the rules of different states. So it's kind of like, stay in your lane and I'll stay in mine. And making sure that you don't try to apply North Carolina rules and laws to other areas, because they're so different, very different. Okay. So that was the last scenario I had for today.
Okay. Any other questions? Anybody have any issues or things burning?
Well, if all hearts and minds are clear, shall we?
We will give you back 16 minutes of your day. All right. Well, very good. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in and joining us today. Thank you, Tiffany, for taking the lead there today. And thank you all for joining. If nothing else, if you have questions in the meantime, and they can wait till Glad You Asked next Thursday, send them to the broker in charge 832 @gmail.com. Sarah, We're gonna take some time back from your day then.
Feel free to leave, people. It's okay. I have a question about when, like, because I post on social a lot and I'm trying to do that more often. When exactly do I need to put the hashtag KW or Keller Williams Realty on it? When is it considered advertising, I guess?
Ooh, when is it considered advertising? That's a big one. So I'd like to ask a clarifying question. What are you posting?
Well, like if I share my video I had done at a property, I would probably need to put Keller Williams on there,
Mhm,
right?
mhm, mhm.
But if I'm just like posting something cute about it and don't mention the address,
So
I don't know.
not
I guess I'm
advertising,
just trying
just
to.
making, so not an advertisement, just making a statement. Oh, what a lovely kitchen.
Well, obviously that one's not, but maybe like if you could help me define what is considered an advertisement. I don't know. Is it too vague?
Not necessarily. But just some clarity around, depends on what your advertising will do or posting, I'll say.
Yeah.
Of course, if it's an advertisement, it certainly should follow the rules of
Let
advertising.
me say it like this. If I don't have the address of the property there, do I need to put it?
If I don't have the address. So what are you saying? Nice home for sale?
If I'm saying anything, is the address what defines it as being advertised? You know what I mean? I'm trying to find what is triggering my need to put it there.
Gotcha.
That is a really good question, Sarah. And I will tell you, the commission sort of skirts around it a little bit, and so it's hard to really pinpoint an exact, they don't have a rule that says address is the trigger, right? And so what I generally tell, agents is that if it's related to real estate, just put the KW in there. If you're putting a picture of you and your dog or, a lovely tree, if you're just posting just to be posting or neat thoughts or ideas, they don't necessarily require it. But if it has to do with real estate, if you have a home that you have listed, if you're doing advertising for an actual client, a current client, I would always put a KW in that advertisement. So that's just erring to the side of caution. That's what I would recommend.
Right. And even when it comes to services as well, just advertising your services, just cover yourself, hey, I'm a licensed broker, then broker name needs to be there.
Okay, so I put up a post yesterday that was like just a picture of my plants in my trunk. And I was like, taking plants to my new listing photo shoot, hashtag Sarah, sell with Sarah Montrose or whatever. And I don't think I put the hashtag KW in there. Would I have needed to? Because it's about real estate, but it's not about a specific listing or a client.
Yeah,
Right.
I would go err on the side of put the KW there. So there's no confusion about the service you're providing. Okay, if you're providing real estate services,
Or
then
are you providing a staging service,
Right.
So, right.
Exactly.
Great question.
Very
Thank
good.
you. Yeah.
Very good. That wasn't bad, Sarah.
We still have 12 minutes to get
I was
back.
gonna say, we still have time.
Did that jog any other questions? Mike, what was that you were
I was just thanking you two for being here and supporting us and giving us your great knowledge. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for being here. And
Yeah.
You're welcome.
it's a pleasure for us to do, to be able to serve.
Yeah.
See you later.
All
Okay.
right.
Thanks.
Okay.
Bye,
If
everybody.
nothing else, bye, everybody.
See you next week.
Yep.
And we're glad you asked.
So glad you did.
Yeah. Teresa, can you hang you got about 3 minutes?
Yes, for
You
you.
do? Oh, why? Thank you, darling. Okay. So the big thing is, oh yeah, so we've got, if you want to go ahead and start creating a list for next week, but, yeah. No,
Okay.
nope.
You,
Yeah.
Tiffany, I'll tell you what.
Oh, Mary's asking, are we supposed to have a meeting right now?
Yeah, let's in here and get since it's recording
Okay.
and get on my personal, just
Your-
go there.
Okay, and
Yep.
we'll do it from there. Okay.
Yep, okay.
Yeah, so we are gonna meet. We're gonna just
okay.
go meet on the other link.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll get my paper.
Okay. Thanks,
All
dear.
right.
Okay. See you soon.
Okay.